Good evening and welcome everybody to this session. Today we will have an interactive and rich discussion on a journal article that was selected by one of us who is a doctoral applicant in a cancer research program. So on behalf of the team at AIDA Africa Journal Club, I would like to warmly welcome you. And I would like to ask you to please introduce yourselves in the chat. Please tell us your name, your institution, your field of study, and anything else that you think would be of interest to this meeting. I would like to know what our different subject areas are, as well as when we can partner even in future. We'll be sending some links with feedback forms. Please don't ignore them. Please fill out the feedback because it's very valuable to us. This is the first time that we are hosting a journal article review, and I will mention a few things that are critical in reading a text. There are some guidelines in critical analysis of a text that were given to us by Auma Okwani. This is a Doctoral who's well known to a lot of us in the journal club space. And critical analysis is a key process in all academic work and involves applying rational and logical thinking while analyzing the texts that you read and write. So this process of critical analysis will include asking questions, identifying claims, examining the validity of the claims and the evidence provided to support them, relating theory to practice, making comparisons and evaluating. So if you are in a presentation such as this, which is a journal article review presentation and a critique, you will have an analytical mind. You need to ask questions that relate to the context and the big picture of the text, then examine the author's argument and the evidence provided to support it. You should also consider the style of writing and how it affects the clarity with which the author's argument is presented. So some guiding questions are, what claims are being made in that journal article? How is it supported? What is the quality of the evidence, the validity of the methods and analysis? Are the points relevant? Does one point lead logically to the next? What has been left out, and is this significant and why? Which parts do I agree with and why? Which parts do I disagree with and why? What are the strengths of this text? What are the weaknesses? What, if any, are the assumptions that the author makes? What are the weaknesses? Examine the conclusion carefully and ask yourself, is this the correct conclusion from the points made in the argument? And finally, do I agree or disagree with this? So this review checklist was graciously shared to us by Dr. Auma Okwani, who is currently based at Erasmus Mundus in The Hague. So this will really be critical for you to consider as we go along. Remember, we are having a mock session, which is a preparation session, and it will be a wonderful learning experience to learn about journal article review. So I now would like to introduce our candidate, who is a doctoral applicant at the German Cancer Research Program. Maureen Kipkoech has a master's in public health from Kenyatta University and has extensive experience in the field of public health. She has shared with us a paper, and I'm not sure if there's a link to the paper, Maureen. If you have the link, that's okay. If you don't, that's okay. You can post the link in the chat so that we can all have a copy of the paper that you will be reviewing with us today. So Maureen Kipkoech will present for 7 minutes, after which there will be a panel of reviewers which will each give comments for 5 minutes each, and that will take us to round about 1 hour. And for the extra time in the final half hour, we can have comments from the audience as well. Now, I would also like to mention that there were some panelists who would have wanted to join us, a few panelists who could not make it to the live presentation, and they requested the recording so that they will critique the review from this rich discussion, and they will add their comments on email. So Maureen, we are here for you. This is going to be a wonderful session for your support. And let me just see which of our panelists have arrived. I can see Dr. Stella Osoro is here. Welcome. Dr. Stella, please unmute and say hello briefly.
Hi everyone. This is Dr. Stella, clinical psychologist. Glad to be here this evening. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I can also see Mr. Harrison Chege. Chege, welcome. Please say hello.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Mr. Harrison Chege. I'm an epidemiologist.
Epidemiologist, wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much. So I also see our other panelist, Nicholas Outa, is here. Please unmute and say hello.
Hello. Can you hear me, Dr.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, my name is Nicholas Outa. I am currently a PhD student in the field of fisheries and aquaculture, and I have extensive experience in scientific reviewing and publishing. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. Is Dr. Isaac Ogweno Owaka in the house? I'm not sure how people have labeled their Zoom, so I'm just finding out. Dr. Owaka, are you here? I don't think I see him. All right, let me see if Dr. Amenge is here. Dr. Amenge, I don't see him, so those are the only other two.
Hello.
Oh, here you are.
Hello.
That's you, James. Okay.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much. James Amenge is my name. I'm an obstetrician gynecologist. Yeah. One of the mentees in this forum. So, karibu sana. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Dr. James Amenge. If you hear any of the complex medical terms, we will ask you because you are squarely in the field of health. Thank you. Then there were three other panelists who wanted to join us. Dr. Eliab Some, who is a top public health lecturer, well-known, well-published. Then there was Stephen Olubuliera, who is also in public health, and Sabla, who will be actually giving comments later on after they watch this recording. So on that note, I would now like to hand over the session. And I can see, Maureen, you are ready. Did you have a link of the article by any chance? Or no? Okay, that's all right. You can please proceed. I'm just going to spotlight your video. Whenever you're ready, I can still see people introducing themselves in the chat. Keep introducing yourself. I see you, Henry Morege, USIU Africa International Relations, Dr. Stella Osoro, KPLC Mental Wellness Lead and Clinical Psychologist. Wow. Luchetu Likaka, a reader in criminology. Sylvia Osieko, Social Science Counseling Psychologist from KU. Thank you very much, everyone.
I am ready.
Wonderful. You may start.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Maureen Kipkoech is my name, and welcome to today's Journal Club. I'm presenting a paper on long-term follow-up of the Italian flexible sigmoidoscopy screening trial. And on introduction, colorectal cancer is the second most prevalent cancer in the world. It has high mortality when diagnosed at late stages. However, it's preventable. in some of the previous clinical trials that were conducted, it was shown that it reduces the colorectal cancer incidence and mortality by 22 to 31%, sorry, and 18 to 26% respectively. Additional data about the duration of the protection are offered by single flexible sigmoidoscopy screening is needed. And the authors of this paper are Carlo et al. And the paper was published in Annals of International Medicine, which is an international journal. Some of the affiliations of the authors of this paper includes well-known hospitals like San Donato and the specific screening departments on this subject matter. The main objective of this paper was to assess the long-term reduction of colorectal cancer incidence and mortality after single flexible sigmoidoscopy screening. And also, it expounds on the available literature on assessing the long-term reduction of both distal and proximal colorectal cancer incidence and mortality. The target population were participants or the general population of ages between 55 to 64 years. The intervention was flexible sigmoidoscopy screening, whereas the control was usual care. The measurements were incidence and mortality rate ratios and the rate differences. On the study design, this paper employed a parallel randomized control trial design, which is a gold standard design compared to other existing designs. On the statistical analysis, all analyses were done using Theta version 15, and all the statistical tests were two-sided, and a p-value of less than 0.05 were considered to be significant. And on some of the analyses that were conducted included intention to treat analysis and a per protocol analysis that was performed to prevent bias. On the results, that is on the intention to treat analysis, specifically on incidence, it was found that on all sites, that is generally amongst all respondents who are screened using flexible single sigmoidoscopy screening, the chances of getting colorectal cancer was reduced by 19%, and this equated to 36 cases of colorectal cancer being prevented from occurring. Then on specifics, that is on distal colorectal cancer incidence, it was reduced by 30%. And also this equated to 36 cases being prevented from occurring. Then on proximal colorectal cancer, no impact was observed. Then now going for incidence, I'm sorry, my laptop has hanged.
Oh, sorry about that. You can stop sharing screen and try again.
Okay. Then on a per protocol analysis, on incidence of colorectal cancer, it was observed that on all sites, that is on generally on colorectal cancer prevention, single sigmoidoscopy screening prevented it by 33%. And then on distal colorectal cancer, it was also prevented by 50%, and there was no observation or impact of this screening on proximal colorectal cancer. Then because this study or this paper also randomized individuals according to age and sex, the same results was obtained. However, the level of significance was not obtained for participants who are between ages 50 to 59. I'm sorry, my laptop is hanging. I can't really understand where the problem is, but I'll just try.
You can try, yeah, screen share again.
You can also share the presentation on email, and we share it for you if it continues.
Okay. Okay, then on mortality, okay, and then on mortality, it was found that this screening reduced deaths that could have occurred as a result of this cancer, and that is generally on colorectal cancer by 22%. But going to specifics, for distal colorectal cancer, the occurrence of the disease was reduced by 33%. However, on proximal colorectal cancer, there was no impact that was observed. Going to per protocol analysis on mortality, it was established that generally on colorectal cancer mortality occurrence, it was reduced by 39%. Then on distal colorectal cancer deaths, it was reduced by 61%. Then for the proximal colorectal cancer mortality, there was no impact that was observed. And because also individuals were randomized according to age and sex, there was no significance that was obtained when individuals were randomized according to age and sex. However, the reduction in mortality or deaths that could have occurred as a result of this cancer was reduced in men and in individuals who are past 60 years of age. Then in conclusion, these findings expand on the literature that indeed a single flexible sigmoidoscopy screening at the age between 55 to 64 years is protective. And according to this study, the reduction rate of both mortality and occurrence of the disease can be reduced by 30% in presence of a favorable environment, that is including the cost and the equity of resources. Then this study left a gap for further researchers to try and understand or investigate if other screening strategies like colonoscopy can include, can be protective and have a protective impact on screening and in prevention of mortality and death rates, mortality and incidence of the disease amongst population. And also if it can have a greater impact on women, because according to this study, the single sigmoidoscopy flexible screening was more effective in men compared to women. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maureen, for that wonderful presentation. And that takes us to, let's see, about the time now that we will be hearing from each panelist. So just looking in the room, is Dr. Owaka here? Maureen, you can stop sharing for now. You can stop sharing screen. Yeah, thank you. Dr. Owaka, are you here? All right. So we'll begin by the panelists who are present, and let us take some comments from each panelist, about 5 minutes for each. So we will begin with Stella Osoro, and then we will go to, I see we have Harrison Chege in the house, and then Nick Holter, in that order. So welcome, Dr. Stella.
Well, thank you, Dr. And thank you, the panelists who are here in. Maureen, you've done a good job, and despite even the challenges you had, you were able to finish. So well done. The presentation was okay. It followed well. However, the areas which you introduced, that the age was between the areas which we need to remember when you are doing a critical analysis, when you are criticizing an article, it's very important to explain why, like for example, why it worked very well. There was an effective result towards the gender of men. It's very important to give a critique why it worked well in men and not in women. Another thing, you introduced your participants, the age between 55 to 64, but then you didn't say the number which was there. It seemed like the main study, it was a longitudinal study, because it was done between 1995 to 1999, and then there was a follow-up until 2012. It's very important to explain, to critique how that time was very long, and there are some changes which come along the way. How are they controlled in the study? Again, it's very important to explain how the age, you said about it reduced the death by 22% by the age which was around 65. You can also explain how the age factor, because the age factor, as you age, there is cancer, you become more vulnerable. How did the study cater for that? How did it control that it does not affect the outcome of the study? Sorry. Sorry, I have a cold. And so those are when you are giving a critique, it is important to say that. And then why randomized? Why did you use that? And also talk about the dropout along the way, which affected the results. Which did it come? Did the participants took all the time to there are some who fall along the way, who fall off along the attrition? I'm talking about the attrition. Did it affect the study, or how was it? I think I want to stop there because I'm also not feeling well, but you've done a good job. But then anytime you are giving a critique, it's very important to the outcome. When the outcome is there, it is important to attach the meaning of it. like now the effect when it comes to gender, why did it, what are the things which made that it did very well when it comes to gender? So thank you so much. And I'm a bit straining, but we are together in this. Asante.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stella, and the pointers on what to include when presenting a review of a paper, which is a critique of a paper. Thank you for that. Now let's go to Harrison.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wangari. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are. If you want to put on your video, you can as well.
Thank you. First of all is to thank Maureen for the good presentation. It was well synthesized and it was very easy for me to understand. I know the topic may seem complex to some of us, but anybody from any field at least can understand now. I just want to add a few to what Dr. Stella has just said. Now, this being a randomized clinical trial study, we would want to know some of the limitations, the advantages and disadvantages that are associated with this particular study design. Now, in particular, it was applying to this particular study, how are the researchers were able to control some of these, disadvantages, that are associated with, when conducting an randomized clinical trial study. Secondly, on what Dr. Stella has just said, regarding why were they reducting in regard to mortality rates, and especially among male and not female. Are there studies that have been done probably providing other different results? We do want to know the reason as to why this was occurring, and probably this, would give, a room for, for further, recommendation for further study. I think I don't say, but I wish to thank Maureen for the good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harrison, for that review of the review. Let's also have Nicholas Ota. Welcome.
Hello, Dr. Rick. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so thank you, first of all, for Maureen for this. You summarized this in a way that for me, because I'm in the field of aquaculture, so you made it very simple for me. So I could you broke down the figures. So even if I did not have the time to go through the whole paper, I could still understand the main point. So that was a good thing. However, I want to also bring out some facts here. One of the things is you did a very good job at summarizing it, but I don't feel you did a very good job at critiquing the work. So you gave us a good summary, but you needed to have pointed out which areas did you feel in the research had a bit of questions. Of course, even in your summary, you did a good job, but you needed to point out, I found this maybe quite a bit missing, not very clear. That is what I expected out of that. In your summary, you could have included, for example, in the methodology, you could say, I found this good enough, but I wish, or I don't understand, or the research does not really explain why they chose this methodology over this one. So I'll just give a few examples because I'm not in your field. So I'll talk about generally the writing of this, the presentation of the. I might not go into the details of the context because I'm not an oncologist, so I don't understand. So I'll present my discussion as follows. One of the things I've seen on the paper is they have included titles of the author. So we have somebody and then there's PhD or masters in front of their names. That is one thing that maybe stood out for me. The background, I found the background a bit rather limited because they are saying here that most of these kind of studies up to 17 years, although differences were reported by sex, they're also reporting differences by sex. So why are they doing this study if they're still also going to report their findings by sex or group them by sex, just like the other studies that have happened before? They have made that clear there. So why did they do it then? I've also found it a bit limiting that really, which gap? They have not really brought out the gap. Why were they doing this research? Of course, we know why they were doing this because they have reported the outcome of their research. But really, what knowledge gap or what problem, especially in the field of oncology, were they really trying to address with this kind of study? Is there a knowledge gap that maybe other methods have been studied, but not maybe specific like this one, or has it been done elsewhere, but not so much around? So they really needed to have brought out this very clearly in the background, why this study was necessary, and especially at around that time. The other thing that I also found not very clear is they are talking about persons aged 55 to 64 years. What is the rationale? Why did they not do study persons below the age of 55, or maybe 20 years to 75 years, or 20 to 1,000 years? What was the rationale behind that age, 55 to 64? They have not explained that very clearly. In part of what they are writing is there's a page, there's a sentence they are writing, and they're saying the site, it's under this one is also. So there's a place they are writing as in our previous report. So they have cited, so that is number 4, the citation. It's because of the citation style, but they are citing their previous report, but they are stating it in their text that as reported in our previous report. In scientific writing, you could self-cite, but if you write as reported in our previous report, the presentation itself is not a good one. So you could cite yourself without pointing it out to be a report. Now, under screening procedure, there is a sentence they have written: no dietary restrictions was recommended. What would happen if dietary restrictions were recommended or not? What effects would dietary restriction have on sigmoidoscopy? How did the researchers ensure that bowel preparation was done by the subjects? Because they are saying that bowel preparation was limited to a single enema, self-administered at home 2 hours before the test. How sure were they that this really was done by the patients 2 hours before the screening? The other thing that I also found a bit of questions to ask about is, why were they referred to? There's a place they are saying that this is participants detected to have at least one diastole polyp greater than 5 millimeters or CRC, and those with inadequate bowel preparation. That word is not very easy. At least one polyp were referred for colonoscopy. Why? Why were they referred for colonoscopy if they had those? So you could say to do this, maybe to just give an inference to why if that happened or if that occurred, they had now to be referred for colonoscopy. I hope I'm not taking too long. Now, there's some. Sorry?
Keep going.
Okay.
No, you can keep going, no problem.
Okay, yeah. I'll be through in a few. The vital status of the end at the end of follow-up was ascertained for all trial participants through automatic whatever. So they are saying, now what happened? They have not explained what happened in cases where the cause of death was not anything related to the disease of interest. So we say, for example, that they followed up and found out that some people died. Some people within their study died out of suicide or accidents, for example. How did they treat those cases? Because there was mortality anyway. So did they really single out these people and say, okay, we know that of the subjects we had, 75 of them died, but only 20 died out of of cancer, for example, the disease we were studying, but others died, but maybe not not because of that. So that was not also very clear. The trial flow diagram is very clear. This one they have done so well, so it's very easy to understand. That's one thing I agree with. There's a place where they're saying to obtain an unbiased estimate of the magnitude of FS among compliers, we did a PP analysis. The PP analysis, maybe in your field, is very clear. But for somebody reading it up, because this is what happens. Sometimes when you're writing, you're not only writing for people in your field. There's somebody in aquatic in a fishery science like myself who would want to get some information about cancer, for example, because research is becoming increasingly multidisciplinary. So PP analysis, you could make it very clear somehow so that somebody could understand. Of course, I know it's called per protocol. It's just written up there, but if it was not cleared before, no. Then the role of the funding source. They have written that the funding source had no role in the design, conduct, or reporting of the study, or in the initial decision to submit the manuscript for publication. They have, what then was the role of the funding source? They have said what their role was not, what was not their role. Then they need to bring out, we need to know what then was their role, because whatever is stated in the paper is strictly what their role was not. So the researchers needed to bring out then what was their role. I'm almost through, I'm just scanning through, I had made a few notes. Now, discussion.
Take your time, no problem. These are very rich comments, so you can slow down. No problem, you can take your time. Yeah.
Okay, so now in the discussion section, because this is where the researchers are supposed to interpret the results of this study, they are supposed to tell us why the results are the way they are in their own understanding. Now here, I've just taken I've highlighted a few notes on the first part of the discussion. Of course, they've started by giving us the bigger picture, but then they have gone ahead to repeat a lot of statistics. So many percentages, 19%, 7%, 29%, 19, 44, 15 years. They have repeated a lot of results here. This place is not for repeating results. So I find the writing, the presentation of this a bit awkward, because a lot throughout you will find a lot of percentages. Even when you are discussing, you can refer to the results without really repeating. Like when I read this, it looks like the whole result section is again repeated here. That is one thing that stood out. Now, one thing that also I've found that is nice about these people is the researchers have cited the research whose results did not agree with what they found. They're saying, contrary to what was seen in the other trials, reduction of, so it's a good thing. It shows maturity in science when you can say, hey, my results maybe were slightly different from other people. The only thing they have not done is, why is it that the other studies could have recorded different results from them, even though they did the same kind of study? So the same kind, they applied the same, they applied the same kind of methodology, but why did they record different results? So in research, when you find research that agrees with your work, there's no need to explain. But if you find that people applied the same methodology but got different results or different contributions, it's always a good thing to go ahead and explain why you think they got the different. Is it because of where they were studying, or? And then the last one is in a recommendation should point us very, very, very clearly to what needs to be done moving forward, or contributing, what really do we need to do? This is what we did. This is what is lacking. How then do we link the need for future research to what we are doing right now? If you ask me, those are the few things I found, a bit off that I could ask if I were to meet these researchers. Thank you so much.
Wow, that is quite a comprehensive review. Thank you so much, Nick, for that wonderful set of comments. Indeed, all the panelists have alluded to the difference between a summary and a critique. And you have detailed section by section the ways that we can actually employ critical thinking. Is Jacqueline Miner here? She was to join in a little later, so I'm just checking in the room. Okay, I don't see her. All right, so I would like us to open up the discussion on how to do a critique, but before that, I'd like to also invite Aurelia to give comments on this presentation by Maureen. Welcome, Aurelia.
Hi, Maureen, how are you? You can smile a bit, it's okay. So thank you for presenting your work. First, let me commend you because you did a very good presentation. It was very neat and very well done. Like you can just see from such a thick paper, you brought it quite simply for people to understand, and that's really good. I think I just echo the part for what now you could have done was probably with each slide you're presenting, you could raise some questions that the journal club group can then engage in based on how you're reviewing the paper. So rather than only give a summary, you could have questions that you could ask and say, okay, this is the design that they've chosen, randomized trial, clinical trial study. These are some of the questions that are puzzling me about this paper, and I would like to discuss. What you'll be presenting to your professors is it's like you'll be running a journal club, right? You'll be presenting in a journal club style, And when you're doing that, then you need to guide the discussion so that it is not the panelists who are reviewing, you also present your own review. So I think it's Nicholas who had shared a very good resource.
Sorry, before we go into the resource, Aurelia, sorry to cut you short. I'd like to also have one more panelist. I forgot, I'm so sorry. And then we'll go back to you, Aurelia, for the resource. Okay. Yeah, one more panelist that is in the room, Dr. James Amenge, welcome. Sorry, I forgot.
It's all right. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I believe you can all hear me, if that's okay.
Yeah, your audio is a little bit choppy, but we can hear, so you can proceed.
All right, let me know just if
But it could be my internet.
Maybe you could just go straight to maybe my pointers. Is that okay?
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. So well done, Maureen. As said by the last speaker, you may need to give yourself an encouraging pat on your back. This is courage. This is serious positive vibe that you've given yourself just to be able to share such a session. Have a good summary as you have done, clarity of thoughts. And just as previous panelists have mentioned, in addition to the good summary, we expect that you'll be able to do a critical analysis in terms of giving the strengths, the weaknesses that you probably have been able to pick up. And I will not go probably into much detail. So I'll maybe mention a few things that I picked as relevant or rather important. So one, as one of the panelists have mentioned, that there is a bit of limitation in the background information with regard to this study. It would have been very critical for it to be self-explanatory, that somebody who is reading that study, just from the background and introductory part, has a clear guidance, a clear picture of what is being done and the rationale behind them. Two is the timing of this study appears to have been quite some distance past, and therefore it really comes in as, is it really applicable in the current clinical practice? Is that knowledge still applicable now? Has the practice changed? And so those are things that may need to come out quite clearly in terms of when you're trying to look at the time frame for the study that has been picked. On the same background, I agree with one of the panelists mentioned that the knowledge gap has not been there. There's miss explaining why are we doing this study? What relevance is it? What value addition is it creating in this field? And so that may need to have come out better, and that would have provided a good background or basis for providing a positive criticism in terms of this in this article. For example, we are talking about single flexible sigmoidoscopy. Why single? Have there been attempts to do multiple? Is there any advantage of one over the other? So why are we choosing the single one? Does it provide any advantage? Is it a cost benefit? Is it removing unnecessary dangers in terms of the procedure risks, but yet still providing the same outcome? That's very critical for us to be able to have a look at. We've highlighted the issues of the rationale of the age group that has been picked. Could it have been that was the standard at that time? And if that was the standard of that time in terms of screening, does it still apply now? Why that age group? Was that age group in those specific sites, or what is applicable across the whole of the country, the Italy of being the country of interest? Now, for every clinical procedure, there are usually standard procedures. Now, for example, one of the panelists have actually mentioned this, the preparation of gut. It was self-done, use of enema, the time duration between the enema administration and having the procedure done. Were those the standards at that time? If that is the case, then it needs to be mentioned that they were doing it as per the guidelines of practice at that time. And therefore that provided a reason for doing that kind of preparation of the gut. The sites chosen had gastroenterologists. Now, these are specialists who have more skills, interests, specializations in looking at issues of the intestines, where the colorectal carcinoma actually lies directly under their care. But again, were the sites equal in terms of the level of expertise? Was it done by one person, a junior gastroenterologist? Was there a need for a repeat relook? But if, let's say, an abnormal finding was noted, was there room for another person to look at it who is more experienced? What is the risk of variability in terms of the findings when doing that sigmoidoscopy? So those would really brings a lot of concern in terms of, even when you have a small polyp less than or 5 millimeter or less, a newly qualified gastroenterologist may not be as comfortable to take compared to who has been seasoned. So was there an average expertise procedure? And I think the other things have actually been mentioned, so I won't really add much except for 2 last comments. One, we're talking about screening, but at the same time, we're intervention. Now, screening basically means looking for those at risk, and then now you make a decision on an intervention or otherwise. But then our intervention included looking and treating. Then the question then that comes up is, should the study have been looking at the screening and intervening for us to be able to make a determination on whether there was a change in incidence and mortality outcomes? And why will this be important? Because if, for example, the polyp was present, then we don't do anything about that polyp. Now that would be screening. So basically looking at those who are found to have polyps are at risk of getting the cancer. So then what's next? But our study, the procedure being done included both looking and doing something about it. So the use of the word screening then becomes a concern. Is that something that we can criticize? I think so. I think so. Finally, the control group, I'm struggling, maybe I might have missed it, but I'm struggling to understand what was the care bundle for the control group. They are lost, there was no follow-up to them in the sense of what they did or not. We are assuming that there's something that is a common practice, but what did it entail? Could the control group probably have had a better follow-up than the follow-up we had for the intervention group? probably a clearer understanding of what it entailed for them would be critical for us. And then finally, I think in appraising, then maybe we may need to just make a clarity in terms of the discussion, that it becomes discussion devoid of repetition of the result findings. So that in the sense, what it means, it basically, for example, I'll give an example, that a single flexible sigmoidoscopy reduced, let's say, mortality, which has also raised a concern by one of the panelists, as correctly put, that the mortalities could be because of various causes, despite mortality that had undergone this, they could have died from something different, which we did not have that analysis done. In reduction in incidence, it becomes full stop without any further details of
It's like we have lost him. Hello.
Welcome back, Dr. Menge. I think your audio had cut off. You can just say the last sentence again, the previous sentence. You are muted. Dr. James Amenge, please unmute. Welcome.
Thank you. I think basically I'm done.
You can please repeat the last two sentences. I think your audio got cut off.
All right. So what I was mentioning, that in the discussion, it is important that we hammer the main finding that you want to discuss, and we put it as broadly as possible. And then now we go into the discussion without having to repeat the detailed results that if you wanted to know, you would have actually gone back to the results section and determine what they are. So basically, I'm just emphasizing what one of the previous panelists had mentioned, just to make the discussion more lively, more without losing the track or the flow for the reader. Otherwise, thank you so much. Well done. Keep moving. A great step ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm glad you are able to join us and giving quite insightful and incisive comments as a medic on the study as well. So is there any other panelists I have left out who has joined maybe later? All right. So I'd like to also...
Dr. Okare.
Yes, Dr. Stella, welcome.
If you can allow me to give something small, and then I beg to leave early. There's one thing when we talk about the longitudinal study, which this article is, we talk about the baseline, which is the screening part of it. And then we look at the midline, that is now the intervention. The screening, the baseline is more of this population now you want. And then the midline is about the intervention which you're going to give. And then you can now report the end line, which is the result, the outcome. So Maureen, when you did a summary, it is very important to make it rich, that all the clear steps which were to be followed to show how the baseline was done, that is the screening, and also the intervention, how it was done, taking a factor on the control group. And also the end line now reporting of the outcome. It's clear that the age was between 55 and 64. And when you see it is a lot of many years which were taken. What about somebody who was at 64? The years which were taken at that time when the study was ending and the follow-up was done, it was about maybe 70 plus years. How then did this study mitigate the fact that at that age, there are other ailments which come along the way. How did they study mitigate that? What was done to safeguard that even if there are other ailments which came along the way, they never affected the results or the outcome of the study? How did it cater for that? Talk about the control group. What about the control group? You can say that there was nothing which was done. But after the study, what was done? Because look at the ethical issues which come up with this any study which is carried. It is important that this control group was left there, no intervention which was done. But then, sorry about that. But then after the study, what was done? Was there any debriefing which was done? Because any participants who were in a study, after the study done, it is important to do a debriefing of the exercise because of the ethical issues. Remember, we don't leave any participants unarmed or more worse than the way we found them. So how did the article does not address how the ethical issues, the issues of confidentiality, because this was dealing so much in depth on, remember the Powell and all that, much intervention which was done. It was infringing on the privacy of the participants. How did their confidentiality and the ethical issues taken, how were they taken, what was discussed about it? Maureen, what I can be able to leave with you is that, yes, you did a good job, but it was like a summary of it. Make a critique. Remember, you're going to be a PhD student, and PhD student is more about criticizing. You have a critical understanding. You criticize the study. You come from a point where you are saying, this is my input, and this is my voice in this study. And then that is when you become now a scholar, by criticizing an article, but not giving just a summary. This was done, this was done. It is more to go in. Why did it come like this? And what about this if this was done? Then what could have come out? That is a way of criticizing any scholarly article. Otherwise, thank you so much, and I'd like to leave early my team so that I'm not feeling so well. Thank you so much.
Oh,
and Maureen, I wish you all the best. I wish you all the best. I know you are able to the task. We have worked a journey with you, and I know that you will make it. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Stella Osoro, and for availing yourself. Is there any other panelists who would like to say something before I open up the discussion? And before I give another panelist, I just wanted to comment very briefly on the time allocation. You had 7 minutes. You had some trouble with your technology, so I'm sure you'll have time to look into that. I think that's the reason it's extended. So one of the ways to structure when you're given a time limit is to kind of think about the main points of the skeleton and by what time should you have completed so that you pace yourself. So you spent 12 minutes, which was almost double. And I'm sure this is okay. Today is a practice session. And when you go to the actual interview in 2 weeks, you'll be well prepared because you'll have taken all this feedback and you will be doing a much better job at being precise and being concise. And there's a way even your slides can shift around in order to display or reflect a critique. So you're not coming to present a paper, you're coming to critique it, as everybody has said. So that's just my little, of course, we'll give you a chance also, Maureen, to comment at the end, but I want to invite, I see Nicholas Outa would like to say something. Welcome.
Oh, okay. Maureen, this is just the last one, and it's a quick one. What happens is, whatever is being tested here is they just want to see, they know that you are in this field, you are competent. I think that's even why you were shortlisted for this. They could not have shortlisted you if they doubted your capabilities. Whatever is being looked for is, can you critically read text and be able to point out areas of, because even when papers undergo peer review, I do a lot of peer review, but even when papers undergo peer review, you cannot say that the paper will be 100% write without, you know, any faults. I'm not saying you have to point out all the faults, but even in your summary, that also shows there's a difference between reviewing literature and literature review. I'm not going into that, but the summary showed the fact that you were able to review that literature and give us the take-home, the main points out of it, which you did very well. But now you needed to go ahead one step further and say, fine, in as much as this is what I picked out of the study and this is what I could summarize, I had a few questions, or I had a few areas that I thought maybe, you know, were not very clear from the study and could have, if addressed, could have made it much more easier to understand. And then you need to point out those areas. So then they will know that you have a keen eye for scientific literature. So that is demonstrate that you have a keen eye for scientific literature. So I think that is the most important thing. But, you know, I wish you all the best. I know you've got this. We are coming here to listen to nice stories. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And on that note, I'd now like to invite Maureen to just tell us, what are you getting? How are you feeling? What is your impression so far on the comments? We were now opening up for the real, you know, discussion, which was why we all came. So what do you have to say?
Yeah, first I must thank all the panelists. And I must acknowledge that indeed this session is a learning platform for me. Remember, I told you, Dr. Wangari, that I've never done this before. Although even as I was reading through the paper, I pointed out some of the weaknesses that I thought this study did not address well, and also some of a few strengths. But then what was challenging to me was, how will I start? I have 7 minutes. What will I present? If I go on critiquing, I'm one of the people who is a bit detailed, but then I want to believe that the time that I have before my actual interview, I'll have at least organized myself and pick the key points. So I was wondering to myself, if I start critiquing this paper, slide by slide, or chapter by chapter, then I may end up taking long time. So that is the reason as to why I decided to keep it cool and just learn from this platform, so that even as I prepare, I may gain a lot. And then I think Dr. Wangari also, you'll give Aurelia time. She was speaking about something important, and it was interesting that at the beginning you need to guide the panelists about what the discussion will all entail. That is something that even I was not aware. I was just in between thinking that will I be the one guiding the panelists, or I'll just make my presentation and sit and wait for them. Yeah, so I'm learning, and actually I appreciate input from all the panelists and all the sacrifice you guys have made just to be here. I know it's night, and to help me grow. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Of course, I will invite Aurelia to say more about that. And there was a checklist that was graciously shared by Nicholas Outa on a guide to how to do a peer review of a randomized controlled trial, or an RCT type of a study, which was quite specific. Aurelia also shared a general checklist, a guideline on how to critically read a text. So I think this is now the time when we can discuss what is expected. You have to obviously look at the requirements from the doctoral application panel and what they are going to be asking, because it will be an interview. So Aurelia, I'd like to invite you now to help us open up this discussion on what you were saying earlier about what is the expectation of a student who is in front of a panel doing a peer review. And everybody else in the audience who would like to share, just raise your virtual hand. We have about 19 minutes, so let's talk. Aurelia, welcome.
Thank you. It's open to everyone. I just want to understand, Maureen, what is the interview about? Like, what are they expecting from you in this interview? Let me just get that very clear.
For this specific interview, the one we are dealing with now, I'll be required to make a presentation of 7 minutes, after which they will engage me for 13 minutes. And the presentation—
On the paper?
Yes, on this paper that we are discussing.
Ah, so it is okay. So you read it, you have read the paper, you do your presentation, then they ask you question about it. Okay, so now I get it. I had thought it is, you're going to engage it like a journal club session where people now engage in a discussion. Well, it's more or less the same, but this one is a bit different because now they are asking you questions about the paper and your presentation, right?
I'm not sure because they stated that the presentation should be in a journal club format.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone is welcome to chip in. First of all, a journal club, even if we call ours journal clubs at AID Africa, ideally journal clubs are set up to be spaces where people critically review text. And normally it's people who are within the same sort of area of study. So for you, I'm sure you will be amongst people who've been in that field, who are in the health field. So that might be a bit more easier than an audience which maybe has no experience in the topic, but it may also be a bit more demanding because these are people now who are in your field and they're well aware with methods around even randomized trials. So it puts a bit of little pressure on you to be quite thorough in your reading. And I think the comments that everyone has given you can help you. And I don't know how you'll access those comments. Maybe you listen again to the video. But I've seen Outa has sent his comments. I wish all the panelists can send comments so that Maureen can just go through them and just try to see if such a question is asked of you, how would you respond? Because maybe that's what they will do. You will present, then they ask you, maybe, do you think the randomized trial provides conclusive findings? What do you think about the methodology? What do you think about assumptions? And I think the comments that the panelists have given you can help you do that very well. So please share them in writing so that she can use them. I think also during that session, they will also want to see your review, as we have said. So maybe you could have as a last slide, sort of what are your thoughts about this paper? You could do a presentation of 4 minutes and then 3 minutes, you're giving your review of this paper. And a critique doesn't always have to be a negative. It could be what is impressive about this paper, what is new about this approach that they have used, and then what do you think has been left out? What assumptions are they making? And then you can give that as a last slide of your thoughts about the paper. And then they'll see that you actually engaged in it. Yeah, I think for now, that's what I would say. Use the panelists to guide you and have your review as a last slide. I think your slides are very well outlined. They are not so crammed up, so that one you can keep. Yeah, I've seen James' hand is up. James?
Yeah, I think, thank you for bringing up that. I must equally apologize to, I think, Maureen. The expectations probably may not have been harmonized. But however, my suggestion probably, as has been said, I would highly recommend that you don't go into this meeting blindly. Are there colleagues who are ahead of you whom you can reach out to find out what does this meeting entail? If that's not possible, do you have a supervisor with whom you can have a chat just to give you an idea of what this discussion entails? Are you expected just to provide a summary of the paper? Are you supposed to provide a peer review, which then entails kind of a critical appraisal? Then that would then enables you to rearrange your presentation so that, as said, you have your summarized picture of what the study entails. and then you bring on board the areas that you would want to appraise, both in positive terms as well as in negative terms, the criticism that you want to provide. That may probably give you a better idea. So my suggestion, I think the key word here is, don't go into this discussion blindly. Go out, find out what are the expectations from you. What will this journal meeting and expect from your end? Just a summarized form of the article to make the audience be at par with the document, but I'm sure they'll have already read the document, and therefore giving them a summary of what they already have may not add much value, but more looking at what are your critical thinkings about the whole of the study in the aspects as I've mentioned: study site, the introduction, the methodology, discussion, basically the whole presentation as has been discussed. So I agree. Once you understand the expectations, then you can review what has been discussed today and prepare yourself in advance. That if made, for example, someone is going to ask you, what are your thoughts about the setting of the study? Then you know, what does this setting entail? All right? What are the questions to raise about it? All right? The generalizability of the study setting in the whole of that country, the whole of the population, is it applicable or not? Then you can have a critical mind when answering those questions. The good things, the positive things, and the things you think could have been done better. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, James. So let me just say, finally, you could even have to look a bit more proactive. I think you could then have the questions I was saying, that these are some of the questions you had about this paper, and if there's an opportunity, you'd like to engage them in a discussion, because it's a journal club. Because journal club, what you do, you present the paper, you present your review, and then members give their input. So you could, because now they want a journal club style, it's not just one way, them asking you, it's also you presenting, these are some of the issues that came up, and I would love if we can discuss and have that discussion. So yeah, I think it's doable, and we can always have another session outside the Zoom if you want, but I think you're way on a good track. And I think you've opened for us the first Journal Club article review. This has been the aspiration that in Journal Club we'll be reviewing article, and I think we've started well, and we shall continue to have these reviews, because this is why we are scholars, to appraise science and to give our own thoughts and feedback. So kudos, and we can meet after. Yeah.
All right. I just wanted to add to what everybody is saying about what critical thinking is about. So I noticed, Maureen, you said that you had a lot to say, but you were wondering what to censor, what to pick out, how to put in the main aspects. But let me just say, critical thinking is a very important skill. And I think today you are able to improve and demonstrate better that, idea of judging, deciding, and thinking in a reasonable and reflective way from evidence. How do we make evidence-based conclusions? Can you challenge the assumptions that the paper is raising? How do you define a concept concisely and comprehensively? That's another dimension. How can you think and communicate logically? Then there's the issue of analysis and synthesis. When we talk about analysis, we are breaking down a large whole into smaller units to be able to analyze the component parts, all right? And when we talk about synthesis, we are summarizing or building together smaller units into a larger whole. So the use of analysis and synthesis in order to see aspects of the paper. And then obviously being able to detect fallacies and deception. So it's almost like you're a detective going through the paper. And so that willingness to test and question, if somebody told you right now where you're seated, there is a cat under your chair, you'd actually check to see if it's true, right? So in other words, being open to noticing how you can make connections between ideas and facts, opinions, being critical. So I think this was a really good session. I've also learned quite a lot from you and from the study that you are critiquing. There are many resources online. The panelists are also available for you anytime so that you can panel beat between now and 2 weeks' time. The ones who could not join us will be also adding their comments via email. So I think on that note, I would just like to ask if there's anybody else in the audience who is not a panelist who would like to comment on critical reading or reviewing of a text. How do you critique a text? What do you understand when we talk about critical thinking? Anybody in the audience, this is your chance before we call it a day. Have you learned anything new? Yeah, Aurelia, welcome.
No, I'm just waiting for the members online before we show the that Outa shared, Nicholas, which is very specific to how do you critically review a randomized trial. And that can also guide you very well in terms of the issues that you can raise about this study. And the good thing with a critical review, sometimes you don't really have to have an answer. Even raising a question is good enough, I think. Is good enough and allowing people to debate about it. So over to the members on chat. Please, yeah, you can say something, because this is the direction we also want in the journal club, for people to really appraise papers, because that's the way you also deepen your knowledge and critical skills in your discipline, and also multidisciplinary.
I see no hands raised, no chat messages. Thank you so much, Dr. James Amenge, for your agreeing to be a panelist. All right, so Aurelia, I think you can show us the document that Nick Outa so graciously shared.
Is Nick there? Let me project it, but since Nick shared, I think he can speak to it, but Nick, if you're there, you can just speak briefly to it. Then Maureen can have access to it since you're the one who shared it. Is Nick there?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, Sawa. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Maureen, you know, generally, like when we were talking here, we were speaking about generally how do you review, you know, how do you critique papers? And also because it was not my field, that's why I was saying, I was just talking generally about whatever is put there. I'm not an oncologist, so I might not know the methodologies, but if anything is not very clear in research, if you've read quite a bit of papers, you can easily say this one is not clear, even if it's not your field. So this table exactly gives you an idea of the kind of study that you've chosen. It gives you an idea of what to look out for when you are critiquing a paper or when you are reading a paper. So what you can do and how you can use this one, because I know we are not going step by step. There are so many questions. You don't have to go through, you don't have to raise issues on all of them, but go through this table. Then it gives you an idea of how you can engage the panelists in a conversation. You could say, for example, let's say about the title and abstract. So here they are saying that there needs to be an identification of a randomized trial in the title. So you give your opinion. You say, in my opinion, I think that for readers to be able to know outrightly that this was a randomized trial, there needed to have been that insinuation in the title, but I've not seen it. So it could be a very personal opinion, and you could be wrong about it. But you are doing a conversation with them. Okay, then you can go just to another one. So you don't have to choose all of them because you don't have time. But this guides you on how then do you have a conversation with them. You might not have all the answers, but say, having summarized this paper and having read it, I had a bit of questions to ask in specific areas. And then now you can be guided by this. You are not going with this to the presentation, but sit down with it and just check a few things and, you know, just keep it in your back pocket. Do you have a back pocket? Yes. Keep it in your keep some of them in your back pocket. So, you know, for them, they might not know that you had, you know, studied this from somewhere, but you talk fluently, like you know, once you study this, you don't, as I said, you don't have to go through all of them, but just take a few of them that can really guide your conversation with them, so that after presenting your summary, and be very precise on the summary, just take-home messages. What was, just the take-home messages first, so that you have like 4 minutes, and then you have 3 minutes to say, in as much as the study was good and I've captured what I have summarized so far, these are the few other questions I had and my opinion on the research. And then you can now bring out your opinions, maybe based on this structure. You could say on this section, I thought this would have been presented in a better way, but looking at the paper, this is not very clear. So maybe I don't know what the panel thinks about this. And then, that's where you now engage them so that they also bring their opinion. Your opinion could be wrong. But as one of the panelists has said, don't go there blindly and don't underestimate anything. If there's anybody you can reach out to them and ask them, hey, have you been part of this before? If they have not been out there, even scour through the internet, go onto YouTube, just try to prepare yourself. But this can help guide your conversation with them. So engage them. If it's going to be a book, a journal club kind of format, then you need to feel like you are having a conversation after a presentation. Thank you.
Wow, this is amazing. And I know that the session will be anywhere between 1 hour and 2 hours. So I think you will have quite a good and successful interview, having taken all the feedback from this group. So as we finish in about a minute, Maureen, what would you like?
Pardon?
Do you have any closing comments as we call it a day?
No, I'm sincerely grateful and happy because I'm now thinking out of the box. Maybe I was just in the box, but I believe going forward, yes, I'll make a good preparation for that interview. And if in case I'll need any consultations, I'm free. I know this is a good family and I can reach out to you all, and people are willing to assist. So I'm sincerely grateful to all people who availed themselves and they sacrificed their time. And thank you also, Dr. Wangari, because when I texted you asking for this forum, you are so much more than willing to organize. So I really appreciate. I don't take it for granted.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that comment and your kind words. We exist for each other. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the founder of Journal Club, Aurelia, and as well as our programs coordinator, Raymond, and our knowledge management lead, that is David. I'd like to thank you all members, especially our panelists who took time to review the article in order that they brought in their comprehensive feedback, and all the audience members for listening in, participating, and sharing and growing together. So on that note, I would like to end the meeting and have a good night.
Good night.
Good night. Yes, you can unmute as you say good night. And I will request Aurelia, please, you can end. Thank you so much, Nicholas, for being here. Thank you, Maureen. This recording will be availed, so.
Oh, let me stop recording.
Yes,
I almost ended.
Yeah, you can actually end the meeting.